Hey, Michael.
Hello.
Garfield.
Good. How are you?
Good.
Hey, Garfield.
I'm just waiting for Jonathan. I'm sure he'll come on, but has anyone spoken with him?
Not today. Let's see. There. See, I could shoot him a message.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you. Did you both get the worksheet I sent earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll give Jonathan a little more time.
You know, I'm not sure if I got a worksheet. I did get the agenda. Where did you send it?
Yeah, I sent it to your Gmail account from my town account, but it got rejected. So I sent it again to the Molly's Daddy account. So I don't really know which email is the best, but when I tried to send it from the town, it didn't go through.
I'm gonna give it to you right now, or you can get it.
Yeah, what I'm going to do, it's okay. I mean, I'll share it during the meeting. So there really wasn't not to do, just to kind of give you a heads up. Was there any word back from him or?
No.
That's odd.
Yes, it is.
It was delivered.
Okay. Well, there's 5 attendees. We'll give them one more minute, and we'll get going. At least we have a quorum, so we're okay to start. Hopefully this isn't his golf day.
No, I don't think so. He would have told us.
Tried to work around that, so. All right. In the interest of time and the fact that we have people here that were on time, I'm going to get going. We have 5 attendees at the moment and 3 panelists, and we have a quorum. So I'll begin the meeting.
Okay.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's July 16th, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Housing Subcommittee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. Pursuant to MGL 7C 30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of such recordings. The meeting is being recorded by the town and other members of the, actually, I see Eileen's hand up. We have members from the Edge, the Eagle, Eileen Mooney. Eileen, I'll just allow you to talk. Is there something that you needed?
Would you please send the summary?
Yes, we're going to be sharing it during the meeting. So
I know, but I want my own copy.
Okay.
Otherwise, I have to copy the screen, and that's.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll send that to you afterwards.
There's Jonathan here waiting. To be-
Okay. All right, let's see. I don't see him on the panelist. Do you see him?
I saw him as a guest. Now he's gone.
No, he's gone. Okay, well, I'm going to keep reading, but when you see him pop back up, you can just flag it to me. So the town is recording it, and we have members of the public, they may be recording it.
There he is again.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay, so I just promoted Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan. So we just started recording the meeting. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission from the chair. The listings of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and the other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. So we have, I'm going to take roll. Malcolm.
I am here.
Garfield.
Here.
Jonathan.
Here.
And I am here myself. Okay, so we're going to get going. When we had our other meeting scheduled, I had sent the minutes around. So I wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to take a look at those. And if there's any questions or concerns, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, of August 9th, 2022. Have a second? Any
Second.
discussion? Okay, roll call. Garfield,
Here.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, and Malcolm.
Aye.
Okay, that was the first. Great. All right,
And
so,
you, Lee, well, how do you vote?
and I vote yes. Thank you for reminding me. I think I did that before, actually.
Oh,
Okay, so a couple things. You know, we have the agenda, the action points, and before we dive into that, there was a worksheet shared that we have before us, which I hope to be able to share with the committee today and begin working on it. But before we kind of dive into the agenda items, what I want to kind of say is a few things. You know, as we all are aware that, you know, there's a housing crisis in Great Barrington and all over the region and really all over the nation at the moment. And this committee has been really given a Herculean task to address this crisis and the issue of housing insecurity. So there's much work that has been done, and there's much work that needs to be done. And I just wanted to recognize, some of the groups and individuals that have come before us, and they're continuing to work on housing insecurity. So as we dive into, some strategies, I do want to recognize groups such as the Affordable Housing Trust, the Community Preservation Committee, town staff, with special mention to Assistant Town Manager and Town Planner Chris Rembold, nonprofit or housing organizations such as Construct, the CDC, Berkshire Housing, and other organizations such as Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, One Berkshire, and many others. So a lot of these individuals and organizations, we have the benefit of really diving into the facts and information that they have researched, and using that when we come up with our housing plan or our housing strategies that we will bring to the planning board and select board. So I did want to recognize all the work that's come before us. Also knowing that there has been work done, and there continues to be work done, it's really critically important that communication lines are strong, and that we're aware of the work that's happening on other committees and other boards and other organizations. So some of the charge that we have as this committee is to make sure that there's a strong line of communication, and that goes both ways. And more importantly, that this communication and collaboration is strengthened by community input. So it's really important that stakeholders, residents are part of this conversation. So I just I want to make sure that we're clear about that. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to duplicate efforts, and we don't want to leave behind the residents, because this is ultimately to benefit this community as a whole. So I did want to state that. Part of the work that we'll be looking at is an inventory of what we have now, what is being done. And fortunately, with the housing needs assessment that was done in 2020, we have some information. But as we know, post-COVID, there's a lot of changes that have since happened. There's other information that we're going to be looking into, such as what funds are available. So we have fortunately the ARPA funds available, and we have community preservation committee funds, and there's many other real streams of information. So what I'm hoping to do is really kind of give an overview, and with the worksheet that I'll be sharing hopefully at the meeting, is give a sense of really organizing it in a plan that we can say, okay, well, this is what's come before us. And starting with the housing needs assessment, which really gave us a roadmap, so to speak, in addressing the housing insecurity. So we can take a look at that, and look to see what's been implemented, what hasn't. Look at the work that the planning board is doing currently and is looking at, as well as the Affordable Housing Trust. And some bigger questions we might want to consider is, do we want to look into a housing consultant, someone to prepare a formal plan, a formal housing plan? Is this something that we feel as a committee would be worthwhile? And that would take funding. So that would be something that I would draw your attention to. And look at the deadlines coming up. Do we want to have something ready for this budget season? And also, do we want to look at, focusing on low-hanging fruit? What's the immediate action items that we can do this year to try to move things along? So really, I'm trying to be proactive as much as possible, but be mindful of the work that is happening on other boards and other committees. So any thoughts with anything I said? That was just kind of an overview, but I just didn't want to begin without mentioning all that. Okay. All right. So what I'll do is, on the agenda, I listed a few items that, could really inform us with our information and our actions moving forward. So what I'll do is I'll share a worksheet that I began, and what this is really is trying to do is focus our attention on strategies that have been laid out by previous organizations or current organizations. And so I'm going to share the screen, and hopefully everyone will get to see this. Okay. So does everyone see this?
Mhm.
Okay. So this is just, an attempt at focusing some of our work when we begin our discussions. And I'll just go through some of the categories. And obviously, this is a working document, so I welcome any, input, changes, amendments, edits. But it was my attempt to start focusing some of the information that we have at hand, specifically from the housing needs assessment that was done in 2019, 2020. Also, Berkshire Regional Planning, One Berkshire, in partnership with Berkshire Regional Planning, came out with a housing vision for the region, and that's something I do want to draw attention to. So when you look, sorry.
I just said I have that.
Oh, great. Super. Yeah. So what I'll draw your attention to right now is just the columns and explain what this means. So in A, can you guys see my cursor?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
source, this was just trying to source kind of where this information came from. So HNA is housing needs assessment. And HO is the housing goal. So at the end of the housing needs assessment, there was a section called implementation recommendations. And what this is doing is really tying those implementation recommendations to this. And I was trying to make a correlation between the two. Now, what was nice about the housing needs assessment is that it also tied itself to the master plan from 2013. So there's continuity there. It's not like we're, coming up with things that haven't come before us. So what they did is that they looked back at the master plan and then tied it into some of the issues that were raised. So that's where source is. So as we go down, what I was also doing is, if there was, let's say, a committee member that wanted to raise something that they had read somewhere else, or maybe it was an idea themselves, I also was going to start putting initials. So I have LD for something. So that might be something that you've heard or seen in other municipalities, or something you came up yourself. And what I'm trying to do here is, when we do talk about this, we can remember who brought it up. And so this person ideally might have some more information to share. So I just, started populating it with LD. And this was just to say that, it necessarily wasn't on the housing needs assessment, but it's something that I had either read or thought of. And obviously, I'm not going to be the only person that came up with this, but I just wanted to give some kind of tie back to where the source was. The link here was just any information that might be helpful. So, for example, number 3, it says consider cluster development, etc. So during the housing needs assessment, or in the housing needs assessment implementation recommendation section, they referred to Nantucket. And what I did was tried to tie that into the actual link. So if you click on this, this will lead you to some more information about what Nantucket did. So this is helpful because as we start populating this more, if there is further information that might be helpful for one of us to look into, or when we send this to the planning board or to the select board, that we can provide different information. And it's also information, let's say, that I suggested, but I got it from a different source. So that's what these links are for, just to draw our attention to some additional information that might be helpful. For example, the deed restriction purchase program. This was coming from something that Vail, Colorado did. So this would provide us with information that we could, I'll just click onto it, that we could find information about what they did. So this is where it goes. Okay. So and so forth. Housing strategy. So again, this is tied to either a strategy that was taken from somewhere else. So and a lot of times I just copied it and pasted. Sometimes I took something that I read and plopped it in here with some additional information. So as we start populating this as a committee, this is what this section will bring. So for instance, I was just toying around with a matchmaking program, and this isn't flushed out. Really, we're at the brainstorming stage, but between property owners and with rooms to spare and long-term renters. So there isn't really a source here. There isn't a link, but if, let's say, someone can say, hey, well, actually, I read about this town that does this, this will be an ideal place to put a link. Then over here, we have the demographic reach. So this is just a way that, we could ensure that we're touching all the demographics, that we're just not focusing on one demographic. So, it's not just geared towards affordable housing, which, basically goes from 30% to 60% AMI generally, or workforce housing, that we're actually spreading, we're recognizing that there's housing insecurity across the board, and there's a housing crisis across the board in terms of different types of housing. So this is an attempt to make sure that we're checking in with who the reach is when we are creating housing, and this is obviously very nimble. I mean, we can change things. I was trying to be mindful of youth or first-time home buyers or recent college grads. So this can be flexible. Professionals. This came from when I was working in Lee and Adams on a project with a mill, and General Dynamics had come to us, and they were, the people at General Dynamics were having a really hard time finding decent quality rentals that were high end and had certain amenities. So I put this in here, and it might be something we want to be mindful of. Implementation fiscal year. This would be something that just focuses on our long-term goals as well as our short-term goals. So, this might be something that we can say, hey, we can definitely, try to get this going this year or not. So that's where these boxes are. Responsible entities. So this would be where we would put the select board or planning board or, affordable housing trust. If we needed to rely on funding from an outside source or consultant, work, we could put some of the responsible entities here and the secondary entities. So that's what this column is. Activities. This is, I was thinking this would be, things that if we were to do a certain strategy, such as, let's say, create an ADU program, one of the things we might want to do is conduct a survey. Do residents actually want ADUs? And, what are the barriers that are preventing people from actually signing up to the program or creating ADUs? So that's just a column that would give us some activities that we might want to pursue or recommend to another organization or group to help us with. And then finally, goals and outcomes. What do we actually want to see come from this housing strategy? And it's always good to have benchmarks. So, when we have an inventory of the current affordable housing and workforce housing and so forth, we can look at the benchmarks and say, okay, well, this is where we started from, and this is where we want to go and track it along the way. So, obviously this can be edited and changed, but what I wanted to do is just give us a worksheet that we could start from and really try to focus the efforts, because it's quite a big task that we have at hand. And I think if we, look at what's come before us, and especially because we are very fortunate to have the housing needs assessment that came a couple of years prior to this day, to really look at that and see what has been implemented, and then move forward. So that's a little bit of introduction on this. And in progress, this was just, is it something that, let's say, planning board, is in the progress of working on rezoning, or so forth. When, we know that something is actually in progress, we can track it. So that's what this is. We can, always create other columns, if it's helpful. So if anyone has any specific thoughts about that, but this is just to kind of to flag something. So any thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is a great start, and this is what we need to focus efforts on. What I understand our charter is as a committee, which is really to go back to the select board and the planning board with plans, specific plans for housing. I do think, could you bring the worksheet back?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I think in order to do our job, though, we need to dive in and actually prioritize these different potential efforts.
Okay.
And in order to do that, I think we need at least 3 more columns, maybe 2, but one which actually where we investigate and document what is the impact of the change, who benefits, and how much benefit is there. And the other is what's the effort? How much money or effort is it going to take to do it? And if we had that data, if we go through these things and actually research what is the effort and what is the impact on each of these, then we could sit down and say, okay, well, this is worth it. This isn't worth it. This is something we can do in the near term, which isn't going to cost us a whole lot, but it will have a lot of benefit. This one is maybe a longer term, maybe it'll have a lot of benefit, but it's going to take 2 or 3 years to do it. So we can start prioritizing where the town's efforts, where we recommend the town's efforts, and we can get other people in here to talk to us about what it's going to take and what the benefit would be, and make a case for different things.
Great. Okay.
So that would be my recommendation, to focus on the near term in actually documenting each of these things in terms of what the impact is and what the effort is. Okay,
so I think that's an excellent point, and that's absolutely what we need to address, because there, especially with the impact financially, what will this actually cost the town? So if we were to, and I can clean this up, but if we were to add another column about expenditures or fiscal impact, do you have anyone?
Yeah, it would really be 3 columns. One is really what is the dollars, what's the fiscal requirements. The other is how much effort is it going to take? Do we have the manpower to do it? And where's that going to come from? One is the money, one is the effort, and then the other is the what is the positive benefit.
Okay. Oops. Let me just do it this way. Okay. So fiscal impact, what staffing or
level of effort, really. It's not just staff, but also would we have to recruit outside people? Would we have to get funding? Would it take an act of the state legislature to enable us to do it? There are a lot of different things that might come into play in terms of how to implement these things.
Okay, so level of effort, this is kind of really the logistics, and then the fiscal impact. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So with the outcomes, we can have kind of a short-term outcome and longer-term outcome. We could split that up.
Or just leave it, and some are going to be long-term and some are going to be
Yeah.
short-term.
Okay. All right, so level of effort, fiscal impact, and here, let me just shrink this a little bit. And in terms of priority, okay. Jonathan or Garfield, do you guys have any thoughts?
Well,
Did
first of all, are you going to share this with us? I haven't seen this
Yeah,
before.
yeah, absolutely. What I did is this was shared this morning just as a PDF, just to give you a heads up. But what I'd like to do is, we can't really work on this together outside the the public meeting sessions, but so those will be a working document that we work on during the public meetings. But ideally, what this is that we leave our meetings and come with new strategies or new information that we can populate this. So if you wanted to, let's say, add a strategy to this, you could send it to me separately, and then I can make sure that it's added in, and I'll share it with the committee. So if there's specific things, like what would be helpful to me really is, I know the planning board has quite a few things that you're looking at this year. So what I would ask is that, Malcolm and Jonathan, would help populate this in terms of, some of the strategies that the planning board is specifically looking at. I'd like to get, Chris Rembold here and, get a sense of what the town is doing. Because again, I don't want to duplicate efforts. I don't want to try and reinvent the wheel. So if they have direction that they've already taken or they are taking, I'd like to make sure that, we're not spending our time on something that, let's say, Chris is leading. So does that make sense?
Yeah, so one thing that seems to be missing, and I just got in, so I haven't seen this document. Is, if there's an affordable housing project proposed,
Mm-hmm.
then our experience is that the neighborhood immediately organizes against it. And, if you're going out talking to your neighbors, it seems fairly easy to do. And there's nothing in town that organizes people about the importance of housing and affordable housing. And, if we have this NIMBY group, it'd be good to have a group of concerned citizens that are in favor of affordable housing and recognize the importance of it. And not just affordable housing, but all new housing. And it'd be good to, I don't know what the vehicle for doing that is, but it'd be good to have that group involved in town.
Okay. So kind of an advocacy group that's ready to go into action when a new development comes up, that we could really educate citizens to the benefits of new housing development. Okay, that's great. Yeah. Garfield, sorry, I didn't see that your hand was up. It's hard for me to see that.
I did.
It's just that when I'm sharing the screen, I can only see the screen, unfortunately. So what's up?
Well, last meeting, I believe myself and Malcolm thought it was I know I did, and Malcolm, I believe, agreed that we should have a group meeting of all the initial folks and maybe even work from there or work with them. But we thought that was a good idea because
Absolutely.
we thought the CPC, CPA, us, affordable housing, we thought it might be nice to have at least one representative from all groups.
Yeah,
work
absolutely.
from it. I think that would even help us further along with our worksheet, if you will.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But what you're saying is to have them sooner than later. So let's say the CDC comes in and they say, well, these are the projects in the pipeline. This is what we're building. This is the inventory we have currently. And start from that really to start getting this inventory and finding out their challenges.
And maybe they could actually help us build the worksheet.
Yeah.
By saying, okay, here's something that would really help us in our mission, or here's something that stands in our way.
Mhm.
That's my general thought or idea,
Yeah.
because it could indeed help us with that for
Mhm.
all our work, because we all are doing the same thing, right? But we're still not, we're all
Yeah.
on the same page, and we're not apparently. So
Yeah.
it's kind of nice to see if we, and there is more than a CPA, right? Isn't it CDC?
Yeah,
Someone needs to
Construct,
be involved.
CDC, Berkshire
Berkshire
Hathaway, yep,
Hathaway,
yep. Yeah, there's quite a thing. And, what we'd like is, when we have them join us, that, we have an ability to plug in that information somewhere.
Mhm.
So I think that would be really helpful. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I do, like Malcolm said, I do think it would help even build that,
Mm-hmm.
our worksheet, if you will.
Great, okay. Let's see. All right, so let's go back to this. Did everyone get a chance to take a look at kind of the housing needs assessment? And let me just, I'm going to put that up. So at the end of the housing needs assessment, there was an implementation recommendation sheet. And because I drew so much information off that, I wanted to draw your attention to that. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so can everyone see that? So, this was done in 2019, early 2020, came out in 2020. And what was nice is that, as I stated, it really took from the community's master plan that was done in 2013 and lined them up to update really the housing goals from that and see where we stand. So what I did with this worksheet was I went through the housing goals and the strategies, and I looked at, what they noted as being complete. And I guess this would be, a question for Malcolm and Jonathan, in terms of some of these strategies, in terms of the planning board's work, when things say that they're completed and things say that they're partially completed, could you give us a sense of, where the planning board is right now with some of the work that's being done? So I guess what we could do is just go in order. So looking at HO 1.1, ensure zoning and development regulations encourage, etc. So planning board, is this is completed? Is there anything that you're working on this strategy that we should be aware of?
Well, we're always working on
Yeah, I mean, is there
something.
specific, I guess, is there a specific zoning, or is there something that you're targeting, to bring to town meeting this year that might address any of these housing goals?
Well, I think virtually everything we do addresses the housing goals, but
yeah,
But is there like a specific tract of land? Is it a specific change in regulation, setback,
well,
talking about?
we're discussing a bylaw change that would relate to a few of these things by allowing 3-family by right in certain areas, whereas 3-family is now is kind of a gray area between multifamily and 2-family.
Okay.
So we're looking at that.
So let's see, is that, you see that here?
I mean, I'm with Jonathan on this. I mean, even though it says completed here, these are never completed.
Yeah. Okay.
There's more to be done, including a lot of the things that we have on our spreadsheet here relate to these issues, actually, where we require changes in these things to implement.
Okay. So looking at bylaw change with 3-family by right. Is there anything else specific? So that's, to increase obviously housing. And is there anything else in terms of changes that that the planning board's taking up this year? I'm just scrolling through this to see if there's anything that stands out.
Well, one thing is that in the town code, we have a restriction on the number of driveways that are
Okay.
permitted to two.
Curb cuts, okay.
2 curb cuts, and the third, a third can be allowed if there, I forget what the exact language is, but it's not clear how you meet that standard.
Okay,
And I think it's entirely possible that there are houses that could be developed if a third curb cut were allowed.
okay,
So we don't have any standards for that, and I'm unaware of the select board ever granting a third driveway permit, a third curb cut.
okay. So that's to increase density so that if people have land that they can build on, that there's, more chance
way-
for them to.
There's a way to do it, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's an issue. A curb cut doesn't necessarily stand in the way of
Yeah.
housing.
Okay, so curb cut, okay. So that's increasing density. Is there, and I'm just gonna keep strolling through. ADUs, did you guys want to touch upon that? Is there, with the change that happened with the ADUs and making it easier to build ADUs, what I'm curious about is, why is the take up been so slow? And, what are the barriers to people creating ADUs? So, I mean, that's something I'm fascinated by. And I don't know if you've gotten any information about that, or if there's, further actions that the town needs to take so that more people are interested in building ADUs. Have you gotten any
Well,
feedback?
I'd suggested that we bring in someone like Chris Lee out of the Pioneer Valley, who builds ADUs and has been doing these basically seminars or lectures. I'm not sure. I haven't been to any of them in various states about what it takes, what you have to do to build an ADU. And I think it could be educational and might spur some interest. The other thing is that financing is the issue. And it's not easy finding a bank that will lend, like Berkshire Bank no longer does construction loans
Okay.
or anything.
So it's just too risky because it doesn't increase the value of a house when you build an ADU versus a, extension or.
I'm not a banker. I can't speak to that. I don't know
Okay.
why it's so hard.
So financing. Okay.
But the bottom line is that the easiest way to build an ADU is if you have a lot of equity in your house.
Yeah.
But not everyone does that or has that.
I mean, Garfield, is your hand up again, or is that from?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
I take it down, but I did put it up. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to know, have we, and I don't remember seeing it, or why we are not putting out some public education? I don't even know how the public is even aware of ADUs. Probably if you ask anybody on the street, they may have any idea. And I don't think we've put that information out there.
Add that to the spreadsheet. That's an easy fix.
Yeah. No, I definitely have that. And I had noted, and I'll share that worksheet again. There was something Loudoun County in Virginia have, actually, I'll pull this up right now. They have a whole, it's called the Affordable Dwelling Unit Real Estate Assessment Program. And they have an ADU purchase program that they work with residents and, exchange for building an ADU on your property and adding a affordable housing restriction on it. You get some kind of tax abatement. So it's a whole program that they pushed. And so it's definitely something I think we could explore. My question is, do people want to be landlords? If you come down to the very basics, do people actually want that responsibility of, having a pad in their yard and being a landlord? And is that something that, the town could serve a role in taking that that responsibility away, because, you know, then you have tenant rights issues and, you know, the various issues that come with it. So, you know, that's kind of a basic question. Yeah.
If I may, you did mention how this program in Virginia, but my thought is not educating us, is educating the public.
Yeah,
The public
what we
know
do
about, have we sent out
absolutely.
anything that said, do you want ADUs?
Yeah,
Is it something you want to do? Can you?
exactly.
I don't think average Joe has any clues about ADU, and that rhymed actually, but I don't think they do. I really don't. And
Yeah, I do
we don't
too.
know if we want it, because we're saying, do they want it? We don't know. We haven't asked them.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Garfield. Yep. Yeah. And, you know, so I think that education is a real key element. So, you know, we pass these regulations and we wonder why people don't do it. And that's, you know, education is number one.
No.
Yes, Malcolm.
One more thing the planning board is working on is we're discussing now beefing up performance standards in the zoning bylaws so that not as many, there won't be as much need for site plan review. If we have performance standards, the building inspector can just take a look at it and say, this meets the performance standards related to things like lighting and parking and all those things. So that for most residential projects, smaller residential projects, there wouldn't be any need to come to site plan review for those things. We're still working on that. I don't know whether we're going to have that for town meeting or not, but that's one of the goals, is to try to streamline the process for people to be able to do this without incurring red tape.
Okay.
Who would they see then, Malcolm? Who would they answer to?
The building inspector.
Okay.
So if they get a building permit, it means that it conforms to the building code and the town's bylaws.
Right. Which would mean then, as you're stating, you wouldn't need the site review.
Yeah, if we had performance standards, rather than having somebody come up and say, okay, tell us about your lighting, here's what we prefer, we have it in the black and white in the bylaw.
That's a great idea.
Great. And are you guys prioritizing, you know, these actions that you're trying to get in terms of this year, or how are you kind of going about?
Well, we don't have the wisdom of the recommendations from this committee yet to guide us.
Gotcha.
So we're being haphazard.
So, okay. All right. And, you know, and that's what really is, you know, one of the issues is that, you know, we all are kind of working on, you know, this issue of housing insecurity and really trying to address this housing crisis, but we're working in silos. And so it's really trying to grasp around that problem and, you know, be collaborative and transparent and also ensure that the residents are on board and have a say. So let me
one little thing, if I may.
Yeah.
Can we do, when you say having the residents on board, can we have a little committee somewhat mimic the master plan, which actually had citizens at large, they were called, on this? Include them on what you were just mentioning? Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if we're going to go by it, but HO 2.5, I'd like to make sure we don't go by it. Okay. I think we started it. All right, let me come back to this screen. All right. Okay. We're in 2.5. And I'm saying that because I think, isn't this the talks that we might have started with Windflower and to address this situation? And yep. I could say that the status has been addressed at the very least, and not addressed. Yeah, so so I'm the development director of Construct, so I can give you a little bit of an update. So we have a transitional housing. We have a 10-bed transitional house property on Mahawi Street for 5 women and 5 men. And the property at Windflower that we're expected to close in November is going to be for workforce housing. So we have 13 rooms in the main inn. And then we have a 4-bedroom house and a 3-bedroom house that are separate.
So one of the ideas that we're looking at is to work with businesses directly in helping to fill those rooms. So one way of addressing this is possibly looking at pre-leasing rooms. So let's say a restaurant had a new chef or someone that they wanted to hire but could not find housing. We might work with specifically that business, and they might say, well, I'd like to have a room so that when I do have staff that needs housing, that there is something available. That's one way of looking at it. Another way that we're exploring is working with partners such as Fairview Hospital, and if they have staff that they need housing for, such as nurses or anyone that works at the hospital, we would work with them. So that's going to be kind of more workforce housing. And so we're working on funding and really putting that together and what that might be looking at. But right now, the only transitional home that exists in Great Barrington is Construct's home on Mahaly Street, and that has 10 rooms. Right now, we don't have the capacity to expand that. So we're looking into more workforce housing at the moment, but doesn't mean that we won't. So does that answer your question?
I have a little further follow-up on that. For some reason or another, there was a gentleman who lived there, worked at the package store, and I think you have a 2-year stay. What happens after that? And would we be doing, would those people possibly go into Windflower or no?
Yeah, so it's a transitional home, meaning that we want that to lead to permanent affordable housing. So, we have units, we have over 70 units that ideally that they would step up into an affordable housing home. So there would be a unit available for them. If there isn't, then they would be put on the waiting list. So there is a 2-year deadline in terms of after you reach that, then you'd be moving on. So ideally we would have housing units for them, and it would be permanent rental housing that would be affordable in nature, depending on what income they're making. Yeah. So it's a step up process. And then ideally the goal is home ownership. So yeah. Okay, so going back to where we were, because I don't want to lose track of going down. I am going to go back to the implementation recommendations and make sure we go back to that. Okay. And this is, some of these strategies that you see here have been brought over into the worksheet, which I'll go back to. But I just wanted to kind of scroll through and make sure everyone got to see this. And, what I would suggest is, in addition to inviting our partners, such as Construct and CDC, et cetera, and Chris Lee, that we have Chris Rembold join us and really give us a sense of, of what the town is actively working on. So I did reach out to Chris before I started this process, and I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a spreadsheet that existed that the town was working off of, because I didn't obviously want to duplicate efforts on a town level. So what you'll see is when it says HO14, consider cluster development. Now, this might be, repetitive. And I guess I'm talking to Malcolm and Jonathan when you're looking at consider cluster development by right. Does this make sense? Is this needed? When we, go into the Nantucket link, we can see what this was referring to, but does this look like something that that the planning board would be looking into? Is this kind of an amalgamation of different things?
But we just rewrote the PERD bylaw
Okay.
a
So
year
this
ago.
okay. So this is something that we could probably take away, or does it need to be rewritten, or does this make sense? I just brought it over from the housing needs.
The way you've written that, it makes it look like a subdivision is by right, and it's not. So
Okay. So, should we,
They're both a permitting nightmare, probably.
okay, is there a better way to make sure that we, I mean, is this where we should put the 3-family by right in here? Should I get rid of it and
I think we need to flesh it out and see what it
Okay.
means. I need to take a look at the Nantucket bylaw and see what they did.
okay,
It's a good question, but I'm not sure what Nantucket did that would be different than what
Okay.
we're doing.
all right. So what I'll do is,
Well, from a planning standpoint, a PERD is definitely preferable to a subdivision.
Yeah,
But you get PERDs and then you get PERDs. So like the PERD that is currently being proposed by Habitat is a bad subdivision. It's not even a PERD, really.
what does PERD stand for, please?
Planned unit residential development. And that's for clustering, allowing clustering.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's kind of what's being referred to when it says clustering.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay,
by the
so-
way, Lee, you
Yeah.
and Garfield are members of the Special Permit Granting Authority on PERDs.
Yep.
So you should get a little familiar with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I just couldn't think of what the that meant. Okay, so all right, so we'll come back to this. Facilitate development of infill and rear lots. This was mentioned in the housing needs assessment. Is this something that you might be talking about in the planning board? Is it something?
We've already done a lot of that.
Okay,
But it's something, I mean, if this is still an open issue, it needs to be fleshed out in more detail, what's lacking. And I don't know, it's nothing we're working on currently actively.
okay, but it's something when it's brought to your attention right now, it's something that you might want to look into. You know, basically what I'm doing is drawing the attention to what the housing needs assessment said that was a strategy, and just ensuring that we don't lose sight of that. So, okay. So
No,
I'll just,
it's the purpose of keeping this
Yeah.
in.
okay, great. So I'm gonna put that there just to look at. Target blighted properties to create new affordable housing units. So I know with Construct, we are state receiverships, state receivers, and we are working with the Attorney General's office on a abandoned housing initiative. And what that means is when there is a blighted property that there's a tax lien, and the state is willing to let a town or an organization step in as a receiver and rehabilitate the property, and then it's sold at an affordable price to people that are income qualified. So Construct is a receiver, listed as receiver, and towns could also get that designation once they go through certain certification. So what this means is that, you know, you get some state funds in terms of helping you rehabilitate a blighted property, but it's something that we might want to look into. I mentioned this to Chris to see if the town wanted to look into it, but I'm just going to put a note.
So the thing about receivership is the receiver has to figure out what it would cost to restore the property.
Yep.
And they have to do it at prevailing wage. I ran into this in Pittsfield. I bought a property in receivership, and that's how they established the price, because the renovations would have to be done at prevailing wage if the receiver does it, not if another entity does it.
Okay. I'd have to look into that because I don't know if that's, are you listed as a receiver, or did you work with a nonprofit or with a town?
I bought it at a receivership auction,
Oh, you bought it. Okay, gotcha. All right.
and the receiver had established the price
Uh-huh.
based on what it would cost at prevailing wage to restore it.
Okay. Well, it's something worth looking into. I know Construct has done two houses in Lenox and one house in Beckett, and we're doing another house in Beckett. So I could look into that, the cost of that, but it's not a great moneymaker, but if there are bladed houses, it's another opportunity to look at for funding and, you know, targeting bladed property. So I'll put a note on that just to flag it. Okay, so we touched upon the ADU program, and you know, to Garfield's point, educating is huge. And we really want to make sure that people know exactly what that means. I didn't want to do the whole thing. But I think that should be, you know, obviously a priority, because, you know, we can't expect people to take something up that they don't really know about. So, and, you know, that's where I came into conducting a survey, because I really, you know, am not, you know, 100% sure of why, other than the financing, which actually makes, you know, perfect sense, you know, why people aren't building more ADUs. I know the Tiny House Association spoke with the Affordable Housing Trust. Is that true, Garfield? They were I'm gonna
Yes, we did
stop
speak.
sharing. Yeah, so you know, there was talk about, you know, pads, and that they would build the pad. Do you have any information on what the Tiny Homes Association shared with?
I don't.
Okay. Okay. You know, I talked to a developer, and their take was people don't want to be landlords, you know. And then I talked to a banker, and they said, well, it's, you know, like Jonathan said, it's risky for a bank to provide financing for that. And then you get to the landlords, and do they actually want to be, you know, to be landlords? So, you know, there's a lot of different things, and there's infrastructure costs, and it's actually quite expensive. So it's not something you can throw up and go to Amazon and you know, build a $50,000 unit on the back of your, you know, in your backyard. So
Are people, excuse me, Lee,
Yeah.
are people aware, and I think, and don't quote me, but people staying in ADUs isn't a very long time, and they're transitioning to something else? Isn't it like 4 years or something I read?
no, generally, I mean, it's self-sufficient. So, I mean, some ADUs can be up to 2 people, but there's, you know, there's a square footage requirement. I mean, for a tiny home, we're talking, I think, 300 square feet, or maybe up to 500 square feet. Jonathan and Malcolm, I think the ADUs, the planning board increased the square footage recently,
Yes.
right? I think it's up to, I don't know,
900.
900.
900. Okay. So, yeah.
That's square feet.
Okay. So, so Garfield, you know, it is something that if you're a single person, it might be perfect. It might be all you need. You know, it has a facility to you know, to cook, and it has a bathroom. You know, it might have a compostable toilet. I'm not sure, but it is something that, you know, if you're by yourself, it could be a home for you until you move on. So
I was just wondering if people, you're saying being landlords, if someone's gonna move out of their home in 3 or 4 years, and it's gonna be sitting there, that might not be something that you're going to appreciate. I don't know what the reason is.
yeah.
Why they're not. I'm just
Yeah. But definitely going to your point, I think we need more education for sure around this. Let me go back to sharing the screen. Incentivize multifamily repairs. So this was listed on the housing needs assessment, and incentivizing, through the block grants, there's funds available. Does anyone have any information about this? This might be something that we can look to.
That was a great program, and the funds were exhausted very quickly. So I think that's a very helpful, and it's not a controversial program. So if we had ways to get more money like that, that would be great.
Are you talking about the block grants, or what program are you talking about?
Yeah, the CDB.
Yeah. Okay.
Grants, and the Affordable Housing Trust can't do it.
Okay.
They can't be the vehicle for that, because they have to own it.
Right.
Okay. All right, so that's a good one. Offer property tax abatement program. Any thoughts about this?
That's a good idea.
That's an excellent idea.
It needs more fleshing out.
Okay. Okay.
It is a good
Why
idea.
that's so small.
It's a small flesh out.
That's weird. All right.
It's a good point.
Okay, so that's a good one. I'm just gonna put little marks next to the ones that we kind of like. Okay, number 9, offer grants to property owners and organizations that rehabilitate or convert. This is actually interesting. You know, certainly I've seen, at least on the Hill, multifamilies being turned into single family, a lot of times second homes. But to go from a single family to a 2 family is interesting. Any thoughts about that from anyone?
Well, there are a lot of building code issues potentially.
Okay. So it's quite expensive, right?
Can
Well,
be.
it depends on what
Okay.
you're trying to do, but
Okay.
there may be huge code issues.
Okay. But what do we feel about that in general? Because we have quite a, few large houses around and, that are single families. I mean, is that something that, from a neighborhood perspective that, just as brainstorming, we could see pushback? Would people generally welcome it? I love seeing the diversity in neighborhoods, kind of, multifamilies mixed in with single families, but we can see if there are grants available. Okay, so 19. So this is similar to what we were talking about with the ADUs, incentives. 13, so housing plan. When you look at other housing plans, I mean, this is something similar to a master plan that could take, a year to a couple of years. And I don't know, we have an urgent issue. Do we have the time to put towards a housing plan, or, we know what the issues are with, having the benefit of the housing needs assessment and the master plan before us. But is this something that we're interested in recommending to town staff that we hire a consultant using possibly ARPA funds or CPA funds? So I'm curious about your thoughts on this. And maybe, it'll be clear once we get through this, worksheet. But it might be so daunting that we say, we really need a professional to really spend time focusing on this rather than, 4 volunteers that meet once a month. But any thoughts about this?
Well, I'm kind of fiscally conservative and I'm not excited about spending the money like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Garfield on this. I mean, I like what you said earlier. Let's try to do what we can here.
Yeah.
And if we find ourselves bogged down, if we can't get people together, if we can't go out and get answers, then we may need a consultant to come in and do the legwork for us.
Okay. And the nice thing is, we have that line item built into the budget. I know we have the benefit of Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. Laura Brennan comes in, or Brenner, actually. Is it Brenner? I think Brenner. She helps Chris with some consulting work, and we have that built into some of our budget to work with the town planner. So it is something that once needed, I believe that we still have that access to consultant. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that we thought about that. Home rule petition. This is just something, going through some research that I had read about, and it doesn't mean that this is something that we need to address, but I just did want to draw your attention to this. And Two things. A property sales tax over, in this case, this is Boston, over $2 million. So this is interesting that they went through a home rule petition to implement a new transfer fee of a certain percentage on real estate sales. And so Boston is not the only one that has done it. I think other municipalities have done. I think Concord had one, and there's various other towns. So I'm curious if this is something that we might want to look into to generate additional funds for affordable housing. So that's the first thing I wanted to draw your attention to. It might be something that we want to explore. So it's actually, I'm going to go down to this. I kind of jumped a little bit. Has anyone ever heard of that?
Kind of, sort of, when I was working with Vivian, and I'm wondering how close they tie in, or if this is something that is already being done, and that's the senior tax deferral that was passed by the town at the last town meeting.
Yeah, so this is actually, yeah, I mean, that's one thing that, you know, we have some leeway in terms of increasing, although it's fairly new, but this is separate, Garfield. This is a local option transfer tax. So this would be an additional surcharge that, you know, it would come through a home petition, and it would add a surcharge. In this case, I think Concord had the buyer pay an additional 1% of a portion of a purchase price over $600,000. So it would be done. I'll just click on this so we can see where this is.
Talking about seniors and
No. This is a way to gain some additional funds that could ideally be used towards affordable housing. So it's done through a home rule petition, and certain municipalities are exploring it. And the idea is it's an additional surcharge on purchases of property that are attached over a certain amount. So in Boston, it's 2 million. I think in Concord, they did over $600,000. Yeah, so it says Concord. So it's tied to the median home price, and or a lot of times it doesn't have to be, but generally it's around that. And just from looking at this, it says the municipal home rule petitions take various approaches. Nantucket has the seller paying a half a percent. Concord, they have 1% over $600,000. So it's really looking at, you know, higher price real estate using, you know, additional surcharge, and using those funds to help build affordable housing in a municipality. So is it something
nice? We thought that up about 20 years ago.
Yeah. Is that something that is of interest that we might want to explore? It looks like it would come through a home rule petition. Obviously, it's, you know, it comes with a lot of, you know, it'll come with a lot of discussion, but from a realtor's point of view, Jonathan, do you have any thoughts about this?
Well, given Great Barrington's tax rates, it's harder to sell a home in Great Barrington than in any of the surrounding towns, like Alford or Egremont or Monterey, whose tax rate is a small portion of ours. And this would just make it even harder. And so it would probably depress home values, and which would mean increasing the tax rate. So, you know, it's not a slam dunk.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting to me. I'm curious, Malcolm, do you have any thoughts?
I think it needs to be fleshed out. You know, this is a good discussion, and I don't have a strong.
Yeah.
I see the benefits to it, but I really understand what Jonathan's saying too. Anytime you add you know, a cost on top of something you're buying, even if it's sales tax for buying a you know, a pencil sharpener, it's going to impact what you buy. So
Okay. Yeah, it's obviously not straightforward. It comes with a lot of pros and cons. And, we would really want to do our due diligence to see, what we would expect to come out of it. So let's say we did, in this instance, looking at Concord, if it was, 1% of purchase prices over $600,000, how much money could we generate? So that would be kind of an interesting, calculation to do just to look at that.
The other thing that would be useful, Lee, is to find out whether Concord actually suffered any from adopting this.
Yeah.
And the other thing to remember is the term home rule petition means that it takes an act of the legislature
Of course. Yeah.
to put it in. So
Yeah. It's not straightforward by any means.
Not something we're going to do tonight.
Okay, so that might be interesting just to look at. I mean, I'd be curious. There's a lot of steps involved. There's, a lot of citizens' input involved. It would have to go through the legislature. And I would just be curious if we have any quick math, to look at what that might look like. How many properties are being sold, let's say, at $600,000, and what would 1% look like? So, who's good at math?
Math is hard.
I'll look at Jonathan. I'm sure he knows how many.
He knows math.
How many properties are being sold over $600,000?
Well, to do
Well,
the calculation,
in the last year,
Yeah.
out of 102 properties sold,
Okay.
42 of those were above 600.
Oh, wow. Okay.
but
So
we'd have to know
I wonder
how
what
much
that-
of
Yeah, I
six-
wonder what the purchase price would have.
We'd have to know the average purchase price of those 42 properties. In order to
Yeah.
do the
So
calculation.
42 have been over 600,000. Do you have any sense? We'll wait. I see Jonathan doing some work.
Well, they go down to 3. They go up to 3 million.
So let's just say, I don't know. The
Median's
average
more
price.
median is much more accurate.
Yeah. So I guess the median over properties,
Well, so the
median of properties over
those-
600,000 sold by over
the
600,000.
median of those, what did I say, there are 41 units?
You said 40.
42.
Yeah.
42, yeah, so that means the median is about 765,000.
Okay, so what's 1% of 765,000?
No, 1% of 165,000
Oh, okay.
times 42. So 1% of 165,000 is 1,650.
Well, it's only properties that are over $600,000 we're looking at. So we're looking at the median of all the properties over $600,000. So what's the median from?
And
Property.
you're charging 1% of the total purchase
Yeah.
price, not
Yeah.
above.
I thought it was
600,000.
1% of the excess over that.
No, so
I don't think that's what it said.
no. So basically you would be charging any
1% of
property
the
sold.
portion of the purchase price over 600,000.
Yeah, so any property sold over $600,000 would have a 1% surcharge. So
On
we're
the
trying to
entire,
get,
that's not, I don't know where you got this phrase from, Lee, but it says the buyer would pay 1% of the portion of the purchase price over 600,000.
Mhm, exactly.
Which means that if you
Oh,
buy
I see. Yeah, yeah,
700,000, you'd pay 1% of 100,000.
yeah. Oh, that's right. Yep.
Is that
That's
the
why
way
I
it's
never
supposed to
do
be?
math.
The math is hard.
Okay,
So based on the numbers Jonathan gave us, it'd be like $1,300 per for the 42 homes.
That's a lot of dollars.
That's not a whole lot of dollars, 42,000,
Mm.
maybe 50, 60,000.
Mm.
all right. Well, we can explore this, but it's something to,
And it would also be very divisive in the community, I think.
yeah.
Could be like the Stockbridge split tax rate.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, we had a letter about that, so I'm gonna address that and probably put this on here. Okay, so coming back, I just wanted to flag it as another way to look at generating revenue, possibly. Okay, then we come into cataloging and prioritizing foreclosed properties. So this is something that, I'm interested in. So, we're aware of certain properties that, are at risk of being foreclosed through non-payment of taxes. So it's always good to kind of keep an eye out in those properties. There's a few that we know of. And, when they come on to the books, it's nice that, the town, if they wanted to, or if we wanted to, we're the first in line to take it and, ideally rehabilitate it and make it into affordable housing. So cataloging that and keeping track, I think, is always helpful. I know that Chris Rembold has a sense of those properties, but any thoughts about that?
It's a good idea. It's an available resource.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, if we know that, a certain property might be coming on stream for auction, rather than auction it, we might want to save it as a town and work on it and develop it ourselves. So I think it's important to keep track of those and, have a strategy that when it does come up, that the town is nimble enough to step in. So I'm going to put that as a possibility. And this might be something that, we as committee could ask the town, to supply us with an inventory and say, okay, can you give us a list of properties that are at risk and that might be coming on stream, and then look at those and see how many units of housing that might provide. So 14, we touched upon this. I think this is a duplication, but looking at conversion to multifamily and congregate housing. Was that something, I think, Jonathan, you mentioned about making it easy, or Malcolm, to go from a 2-family to a 3-family, or is that something?
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
but we're not cataloging houses, what potential targets.
Okay. So this is something that I'm actually interested, the downtown rentals. So, with the Mahawi block possibly exchanging hands, and those rental units coming up. And there are other rental units that we're aware of in town that are affordable. Just cataloging that and seeing what exists right now. Are any of these rental units at risk of having their the rents go up substantially, or
The entire Mahawi block is there.
Yeah. So this really kind of got me to looking at other properties and, looking at the main developers that own those, and, what happens if, a developer that owns many units, that person, decides to sell off, and who do they sell it to? And do they all of a sudden become market rate housing? So this is something that I've asked the town to keep track of, and, catalog the number of existing units that are there now, and, really be proactive and, ensure that, we have a way to act quickly if those come on stream to be sold, and what is the town prepared to do to step in to try to keep those affordable? So any thoughts about that?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I have to go. I have some furniture being delivered. I thought it was going to be later. They're here right now.
Okay.
Sorry. All right.
So,
So let me get myself out of here.
Yeah, Jonathan?
But can we set a date for the next meeting before Garfield leaves?
Yeah. Garfield, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Does this work for you, these Tuesdays at 1:00?
Well, it's kind of have to, I guess, because I'm probably one of the few, and you yourself are still working. It's my day off, but I can't think of any other day would be any better. Unfortunately, Mondays could be a meeting on select board.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday was probably going to be my a community impact meeting.
Okay,
Thursday may be the only other day that would work for me, but it would have to be after 5 at that point because I'm working.
okay. So could we look at it real quickly, October 18th, which is in a month at 1 o'clock? Does that work for everyone to keep it on a Tuesday?
It will.
Yes.
All right, so let's put that just before you go away, Garfield, and I'll follow this up. So
All right,
October,
I gotta go.
Okay.
Sorry.
enjoy your furniture. And I'm just looking at the clock and sorry, we're way over. So we can, pause here and come back to this. And what I can do is, let me just share this real quick so we can see where we left off. I will share this. Do you guys have, I don't have Excel, but this was on a Google sheet. But what I can do is I can share this with you and you could take a look. And if you have things to add to it, you could just send it to me in an email separately, and then I can add it to here. Or if there's any things that, comes your way after we break. Is that helpful to you guys?
Yeah, it would be helpful for you to share this.
Yeah.
So I can also include it in the minutes, and then
Okay.
then also, yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, as you see, there's quite a lot of strategies and, we're all wanting the same thing. We're wanting to address the housing crisis and housing insecurity and make sure that we don't duplicate efforts or waste time. So, it's definitely a big lift and we have a lot of work to do. So I think this is a good start, and I'll stop sharing. And what I'll do is I'll share this and we could just, take it up when we meet in a month. And, we'll report back to our boards and just, keep the lines of communication open. Do we want to invite another organization on our next meeting, or do we want to get through this so we have a sense of the totality of what we need to do? And, I just feel like if we start inviting people, it might be, overwhelming information, because then, once we start with one entity, we're going to want another one. Do we want to kind of a big overview first and look at from a big picture and say, okay, now we see the different strategies, or do we want to kind of get in the weeds, because, the weeds is a scary thing too. Any thoughts?
I think it'd be good to do a little more work on this before you get other people involved.
Okay.
I
Malcolm?
agree. I
Okay.
agree. Yeah, flush it out, and then we should invite people in to comment on it.
Okay, great. And, one of some of the work that we can do is put together that list of, who we want to invite. So I think that would be a good task. All righty, let me open this up for
Before you do that, Lee, you were
Yeah.
on the agenda was the issue of the short-term rental and the banning of tenants.
yes.
That
Yes.
should be on the list.
What was the purpose of that?
You're asking me?
Well, you wrote it.
Well, I mean, I think that, we could have that discussion. The bylaw is still with the Attorney General's office and it hasn't even been enacted.
Right.
So I think it's a bit premature to really go into that. But when it was brought up at town meeting, there were no amendments. So I can only assume that town meeting voted the way that town meeting wanted. So
You don't care about tenants, is what you're saying.
I care about residents, and I care about ensuring that there's enough housing for people that work here and live here long term. And I care about housing in general. So it wasn't penalizing renters, but I'm just.
It is penalizing renters. It's absolutely penalizing renters.
Okay. Well, I mean,
I don't view it that way, Jonathan. But I do view it.
That's
as
because you don't have a tenant who does it. I
Jonathan,
do.
can I
Right.
finish my sentence, Jonathan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I don't think it's penalizing renters. It's keeping renters from benefiting from what they might get from short-term rentals, which might allow them to rent something they might otherwise not be able to rent. They'd still have to live within the restrictions of our short-term rental bylaw, But if it was okay between the owner and the renter, why would we not allow the renter to rent it out short term?
Well, that was my question.
Yeah.
And
But I don't think the bylaw penalizes the.
it prohibits it, Malcolm.
yeah.
Read it. It prohibits it.
What it does is it prohibits them from benefiting from what they might benefit from. So I think we should put it on the list. I think it should be on the spreadsheet. If we don't agree with it, then we don't adopt it. But I think it should be something that we discuss, because I think it's.
So I guess a couple questions. There is a transparency and accountability issue, Jonathan. When you have someone that's a landlord that's responsible for a property and that is subleased, and from that sublease, it's used for visitors and or as an Airbnb. When the bylaw takes effect, you know, who is responsible if there's problems? How do we keep track of issues? That is it the renters? Is it the renter's responsibility to deal with the problems? Is it the landlord? And what we're doing is we're not solving the housing issue. We're just pushing it down the line. So what was a property that was available to someone that is working locally or wanting to live locally suddenly becomes an additional motel or hotel for someone that's visiting. It's not really solving the workforce housing issue. It's just becoming passed on into passive income for
You're
someone.
completely misconstruing it.
Well, I mean,
Completely.
that's one of the things. It's accountability, it's transparency, and someone that is renting, we would hope that they would be someone that is invested in the community, that doesn't rent something primarily, could be turning primarily just to make money and use it as passive income. So
No, they're
there's
living
really
there.
no way.
They're frigging living there.
Yeah.
Come on.
All I'm saying, Jonathan, is that if they're subleasing as an Airbnb, who's to say why they're actually renting that property in the first place? There's a transparency issue and there's accountability issue. So you might get someone that rents a property specifically just to Airbnb it. You don't know what how is the landlord benefiting? Are there, there's a lot of accountability and transparency issues that I feel come into play, but in the end, it's really not creating housing for our workforce and our residents. It's just creating another tool to have Airbnb. So really,
See,
I think
I don't see it that way, Lee. I see what it's doing is giving renters another form of income so they can actually afford to rent in our town. And we have restrictions on the number of days that can be rented on. The restrictions that would apply if it was a condo and they owned it are still the same restrictions that would apply if they're a renter. And and as far as the liability and all those issues, that's really between the landlord and the tenant. I mean, if they allow them to sublease, then there has to be some conditions in their lease that regulates the subletting. I mean, and but I don't see how you can say it doesn't increase the number of affordable renters in town if it gives people more money to rent with.
well, I mean, we're getting into income. So, someone that's a renter is now using it as a vehicle for passive income. So, when the town has such a shortage of housing for their workforce and someone rents an apartment and turns around and uses it as an Airbnb, and that's really not helping the workforce. That's just giving passive income to someone that's really taking advantage, I think, of that landlord-tenant relationship. So who's to say that people will not seek out rentals specifically to flip it and turn it into an Airbnb? I mean, that's not solving our problem. That's just creating passive income for someone that wants to make extra income on the side. So I don't think that addresses any of our workforce housing issues or affordable housing issues. That just gives someone a vehicle possibly to misuse that, and maybe a landlord ability to get kickbacks. So, I mean, we could disagree on it, but I think it's something that could be brought up at town meeting if a citizen's petition wanted to make an amendment to it, but it did not get brought up at this last town meeting. So I don't know why, we're addressing it right now. And this,
Because Lee, everything on the spreadsheet are things that haven't been brought up to town meeting. Everything on the spreadsheet are things, so this is another thing that hasn't been brought up to town meeting. And I think we should discuss it. I think it's.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we're having this discussion. Yeah.
Right.
But
You should be resisting putting it on the list.
no, I'm not. We're just having a discussion. I'm not saying I'm not putting it on the list. I'm just giving you my side of it. I'm not saying it's not going to be put on the list.
Yeah, I have to leave.
Yeah.
I've got another appointment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a good discussion. And I'll, when I pass around the spreadsheet, we'll be able to continue this. Okay, are there any comments? We'll open it up for comments from the media. Looking for hands. Any comments from citizens? Okay, so I make a motion to adjourn the meeting, even though it's only 2 people and Garfield's muted block.
Second.
All right, by unanimous consent, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lou.
See you soon. All right, bye.